to the April 29th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen in your background. I can see when you roll your eyes, and I can hear your dog barking. The chair recognizes the attendance of staff members, Jen, Kevin, and our recording secretary, Susan. Chair recognizes the attendance of commissioners, Jamie, Betsy, Russ, Maury, Steve, Peter, Courtney, and Mark, correct? Mark is in.
Mark is in, Kevin is not. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a quorum. Again, I'll remind you guys that for commenting, I'll call on each of you, so let's not speak over each other. All votes will be done by roll call. And again, I know it's redundant, but if you make the motion or the second, I'm still going to call you to vote. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function. Once that hearing has been opened, at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. Okay, first up, we're going to go into executive session. We will be going in to discuss Holcomb, which is 270 Sippawisset, for pending litigation. This meeting will reconvene after the executive session. So I'll ask for a motion and a second and a vote to go into executive session.
So I'll make a motion to go into executive session, and when we're done with executive session, to go into open meeting.
Harlow Hawk, second.
Thank you. Okay, the vote, Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Mark?
Mark, you gotta unmute.
Aye.
Thank you. Maury?
Harlow Hawk's eye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
And Steve?
Patton, aye.
And Kevin's here, Jamie.
Okay. Okay, we're going into executive session. Please stop, IT, please stop recording now. the public meeting portion. So on that note, first up is minutes of April 22nd. Anybody review them?
Yes.
And are you making a motion to accept them?
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed them. I'm making motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
Second, Walsh.
Steve Patton.
All right. I'm going to call for the vote to accept the minutes of 4:22. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney? I'll come back to Courtney. Matthews, aye. Kevin? Kevin O'Brien?
Brian, I.
Mark?
Ernie, I.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, I.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Courtney, you with us yet?
Yep, Bird, aye.
Thank you. All right. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Peter McManus, 113 T-Ticket Path, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace existing railroad ties in an existing wash basin. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, I.
Mark?
Ernie, I.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, recuse.
Okay, Russ?
Robbins, I.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Okay, it passes with one recuse. Next up, Catherine Porter, 19 Clinton Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise, RAZE, an existing garage and construct a new garage, enlarge the existing paved driveway, remove a portion of the deck, and replace with crushed stone, and to add landscape steps within the flood zone. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, I.
Mark?
Ernie, I.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, I.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Unanimous, it passes. Thank you. Next up, continued request for determination of applicability. Clancy Construction, Inc., 32 Owl's Nest Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove 6 trees within the buffer zone to Jenkins Pond. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
Just for clarification, because I do know there are 2 people in the attendee list that are here to answer any questions. I just want to make it clear to them that a -2 and -3 means they can go forward with the project.
Okay, was that comment specific to this hearing? This
Yes,
one?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. So what's the reason for removing these trees?
So there is a new house going in on the property outside of your jurisdiction. And they originally contacted me with interest in taking the trees down. And I had asked them to file an RDA and provide us with a recommendation from a certified arborist, which they did. There's evident damage from turpentine beetle and a pine tree, and the arborist is concerned that the overdig from the new house is going to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Remind-
Damage to the trees, substantial damage that they would have to be taken down.
So there's no requirement for mitigation.
Correct.
Okay, we're ready for a vote? Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Next up, our request for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority.
1 second, Mr. Chairman. Could you possibly repeat, because there are a number of people in the attendee list that weren't there for your initial announcement about the chat function,
Okay, sure.
about public comment being in the chat function, please?
Okay. I'll remind the public, for our public participants, there'll be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will take public comments, and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. So in other words, if you put something in the chat function, a question or a comment, I will call for that comment and staff will read it into the record. So first up is Alan Willis, 72 Eel River Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove an existing shed and surrounding gravel areas and to replace with grass, to remove a firewood pile, to conduct invasive species removal, to remove existing beach grass and to replace with native shrubs, and to install mitigation plantings in accordance with a previous order of conditions. Right.
Mr. Chairman, I just, for the record, I moved, I promoted Mike Borselli to Maria Hickey to the panelists as they'll be presenting this project to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Borselli, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, Al Willis. I'm joined tonight with Maria Hickey, the landscape consultant for the application before you. Mr. Willis owns the property at 72 Eel River Road. Some of you, perhaps Courtney and Maury, may remember the property. It's got some history. There were two orders of conditions issued, one for a dock. The dock order of conditions was issued a certificate of compliance. The second order of conditions was for a proposed house. That order of conditions never received the certificate of compliance. Some years ago, there was a site review with staff, and there were some non-compliance matters that were pointed out at that time by Mark Kasperzik, the agent. For reasons beyond my control, several years went by and the compliance matters were not resolved. And now we are attempting to resolve the non-compliance matters by filing a notice of intent for certain activities that will hopefully bring the project into compliance. The plan that's before you, I'm hopefully sharing with you, if you could confirm that.
You are.
This plan represents a plan of existing conditions and some proposed activities necessary to bring the project into compliance. This plan is a collaboration between Mark Hasperzik and myself, and then input from Maria Hickey. So if I can just go through the activities with you, there's a yellow shaded area on the plan, which was a previously required native buffer that Mr. Willis planted at the time that he obtained the order of conditions for the dock. There were some areas of the buffer that were planted, were either not fully planted or were planted with plant material that was not originally approved. So I will go through those two areas first. There's a note on the plan that I'm circling here with the mouse. It makes reference to an area of American beach grass that was planted in this area. And that was supposed to have been shrubby plant material. So the plan is to remove the beach grass by mechanical means, meaning it's going to need a mini excavator, and plant it with a mix of sweet pepper bush and northern arrowwood viburnum. And that will replace the beach grass with shrubby plant material. The other area of the buffer to the north that I'm circling, and it's yellow, but it also has a dotted hash pattern. And there's a note referencing that. That's an area of lawn that was supposed to, it's a strip here. It's an area that's currently lawn that should have been planted with shrubs. So we're proposing to plant that basically with the same plant material. These are plant materials recommended by staff, Mark Hasperzik. In addition, I want to bring your attention to this area. There's an area labeled shed and deck. This is an existing shed. The property had a shed on it back when the new house was approved, and that shed was shifted and relocated to this position. That was not an activity that was approved by Conservation Commission. In an effort to bring the property into compliance, we're proposing to remove that shed and relocate it to this position that's noted as relocated shed without this small deck area. This location brings it more than 100 feet from the resource area. Therefore, it's not within a resource area buffer, either a no disturbance zone or an outer buffer zone. It is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. This dashed line is the boundary of the Falmouth velocity zone. So we pulled it outside the velocity zone and outside any other 100-foot buffers to wetland resources. It's only in land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's a nice shed, and we would like permission to allow it to remain on the site, just move it outside jurisdiction, other than the flood zone. There are some areas in this location that are bare, that should be filled in with some additional native plantings to fill out the buffer. There's a pile of firewood in this location that's proposed to be removed. There's a crushed stone area around the shed that's proposed to be removed and restored with grass. There was one tree that was missing, and that's this green circle here. It's proposed to be Tupelo at the recommendation of Mark and in this location. And finally, there's some spotty areas of invasives that are attempting to take hold in here, and we're proposing to, they haven't taken over very much, so they can be removed by hand, and we're proposing that those areas of invasives be removed by hand. So when all is said and done, at least Mark and I believe this project will meet the requirements that were in the order of conditions for the house, after this work is done. And if you approve this, work will proceed to bring this property into full compliance. And hopefully subsequent to that work, we can request a certificate of compliance. And with that, Maria Hickey's here, and we're both available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jen and/or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, sure.
Board want to keep it up.
No, I take it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Only because I have to look at two different screens here. Mike, just a couple of quick things. You had a discussion with Mark about all the plantings being in by June 15th of this year.
Well, I saw that in the staff report. I don't remember the discussion, but the client's ready and willing and
Okay.
wanting to do it. Yes.
Okay, so if that was a condition,
I would say yes.
okay, just because this has been,
Yes.
a long project.
Maria Hickey's here and standing by. I assume she's standing ready to do the work once the order's issued.
Okay, if you want to say something, you need to unmute your microphone, and if you have a video, turn on the video. If not, just unmute your microphone if you can.
Here we go.
There we go. Yep.
Here I am.
Yep.
I'm in my car because my dogs will bark when I'm in the house. We are ready to go and plant. And Mark had asked me if we would be okay with that June 15th date. And I said, absolutely, obviously weather permitting. And as soon as we have the order of conditions and we satisfy our waiting period, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. And another thing, Mike or Maria, just given the history, there may be a monitoring requirement if the board wants to put that in. So a monitoring requirement will be, or if the board votes a monitoring requirement, just be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yes.
A 3-year monitoring requirement.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. That is all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. I know that Mike and Maria have been working with Mark, who was most familiar and intimate with this project. So Mark's the one that conducted all the site visits, met, discussed the plans, outlined the non-compliance issue in the last two plans. So staff's comfortable with this.
Okay.
Anything to add?
Kevin, do you want to add anything to that? Kevin Newton?
Nothing to add. As Jen said, Mark took the reins with this one.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, comments, Betsy?
I remember this project for a long time too, and I have no comments. Thanks.
But that was a comment.
That was a comment, but I said it before. I have no further comments.
Semantics. Courtney?
No comments.
Kevin?
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
I just had one quick comment, and it's directed at Jen. When they said they're gonna take in a mini excavator to rip out the beach grass, it's so stable. I don't understand why they don't interplant in the beach grass, because in a natural environment, beach plum and bayberry live in the beach grass. So to still win our battle with getting woody indigenous, I really don't feel comfortable going in. I know Mark maybe was okay with it, but I personally think they should just plant intermittently in the beach grass.
Correct me if I'm wrong, or Mike and Maria, the beach grass area is supposed to be planted with dentatum and clethra, correct?
Correct. And actually, it was Mark's request that a machine remove all the beach grass. I had mentioned that we could plant within the beach grass, and he wanted the machine in there to take it out.
If the board wants to leave that dune in and have them interplant
Yeah, that
that
would be
dune
great.
area, that's a possibility too. It's really what the board would like to do.
That's a much better, Maury, I'm glad you caught that. That's a much better idea. The beach grass, basically the roots of the beach grass are changing the environment
Yep.
of that soil, and, to make it be able to deal with these woody plants. So it's consistent with what we do when there's a lawn and we just ask people to plant with the lawn.
Yeah.
So that was a good catch, Maury.
We're happy to keep the beach grass.
On top of that, then Maria, what would you still propose? Let's say 4 feet on center to plant with, let's say, bayberry in that area instead of like the collective
Absolutely.
viburnum?
Absolutely. I had made that recommendation, and Mark felt strongly that he wanted the viburnum, which I was a little concerned about because it's a really windy spot. And I feel like the bayberry is better suited for that site.
Okay, so I'll just make a note on the plan that a special condition will be, if this is the way the board wants to go, to leave the beach grass area and interplant with bayberry at 4 feet on center.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Maury, anything else?
Board like that?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Peter?
I agree with Maury's comments.
Russ?
I'm good.
Steve?
Yeah, I appreciate Maury's comments. I think it's a better idea. Thanks.
Hey, Jen, do we have any public chat comments?
Let me see. I don't see any chat comments at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Gladfeld.
Who's second?
Maury
Mark.
seconded.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. We have no public comments, so I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ? Steve?
Patton, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Maria.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. First up, Michael C. and Ann Feenan, 101 Lake Lehman Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct additions and to add a patio to an existing dwelling.
Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Tom Bunker up as a panelist. At least I hope this is Tom. It is Tom.
I am here. I remembered to turn on the video this time.
Tom, just in the future, can you do me a favor and just put Tom Bunker so I know definitely it's you?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, it makes it easier for me to figure out who's in the attendee list.
Gotcha. Well, on my screen, what I see, it says Tom Bunker.
I just saw Tom, but
Okay.
we can,
I'll have to see where to change that.
Okay, thank you.
It just shifted, Tom.
Okay, Mr. Bunker, you're up.
Okay, do you have my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Yes, for the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. Prepared this plan for Michael and Ann Feenan at 101 Lake Lehman Road. So what you have here is the existing conditions plan of a single family 3-bedroom house in this location. It's on the south side of Lake Lehman Road on the west shore of Little Pond, which is a tidal salt pond, land under a water body. And so I didn't color it in, but the Zone A, 75-foot bank of a salt pond, Zone A, and then we have the bank here is in a flood zone, little pond, and the bank of land is a flood zone AE elevation 14, which runs through here. And so you can see that from the topography, there's a steep bank. And certainly if you went there, you'd see there's a steep bank. So we have the top of the coastal bank runs about here along elevation 13, coincides with the flood zone at 14, and then runs off. And so that has a 50-foot zone A for the coastal bank. And then we have the other zone Bs, 100 feet for the land under the ocean, bank of a salt pond, coastal bank, zone B. So basically the entire house is within a zone A or a B. The bank, the existing bank is lawn, just kind of crudely circled. These cedar trees are kind of sheared, I don't know what you call them, not topiary, but oddly sheared trees. And from the staff report, they weren't sure where the knotweed was. I have it labeled on here as knotweed in a couple locations, knotweed, and then down on the property to the south, knotweed. Basically, this whole area here is where I drawn on this edge of lawn, and I just went out there and confirmed that. Picture. Go back to the beginning. On this plan, the corner of the limit of work, that stake is there, and the most southern tree is here, and so you can see the English ivy, and here's the knotweed coming up. I see it's just coming up about a foot tall. You can see it through here. The dead stems of the knotweed growing, and it does go right up to where the that's looking south, some other knotweed. You'll see on the plan to show a cedar tree blowdown, and that's this one right here. Another statuary kind of tree. This is the bank, where there are these trees near the top of the bank, and it's all lawn going down, except for a little bit of grassy area at the bottom. And another shot from the would be the northeast corner of the property, and here you see there's actually a little bit more knotweed coming up in the lawn a little bit, and growing out through the bank. This is the eroding part of the coastal bank here. So as I was saying, this line, what we use as the edge of lawn line is basically the extent of the knotweed, and bittersweet and English ivy is creeping up into these trees. So we can take some steps to cut that back. Certainly we have to keep that cut back so it doesn't interfere with what will be seen on the next page as the mitigation planting. So the proposal here is to remove, this was a deck in this location, remove the existing deck, and then there's actually a holly tree and an arborvitae that I put on to be removed also. And this will become a stone patio rather than the deck. It's in the same size, same footprint, with a stone on the lawn area to access the patio, and there's a wooden step there now. And we added a stone step on this side, and there is a wooden, there's a step in that location there. So that's basically the same coverage. What's being added for coverage is the bulkhead is being added. A sliding door is being added in this location right here, and so this landing, a couple of steps, is being added. And in Zone A, this addition across the back is change in color. So this is coverage in Zone A. And the remainder of this is new coverage in Zone B. Up inside the house is not new coverage because that's a concrete slab in that location right there. So that's already there as coverage. We have the mitigation calculations. Sorry, the mitigation calculations there. 1,275 square feet to be planted. So that would be fill in the entire bank. Remove all, or not remove the lawn, but plant within the lawn. Plant the plants within the lawn, but leave free an area here for a path. Now I know that's a steep bank to get down. There's no proposal at the moment. Put any kind of structure there, but would like some area at least to be able to walk down to the water on this location. And as I said, we'll have to cut back. I can pull out the English ivy and keep the bittersweet. I wasn't quite sure from the staff report what was meant. There's a suggestion to move the mitigation planting. Maybe that could be explained to me. But at any rate, this is our proposal, and take any suggestions or whatever the staff report was suggesting about changing the location of the mitigation planting. But that's it now. I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Tom. Would you stop screen sharing, please?
Certainly.
Jen and or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to quickly touch upon the staff report comments. I had actually put that comment back when this thing was first brought before us a few months ago. And basically, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that there was knotweed there, and I just wanted to know what sort of steps you would take to prevent that from spreading to mitigation, and to just bring that to the attention of the commission members.
If I could respond to that, it was noted that it wasn't in the narrative, and that was actually something, I can't remember when I wrote the narrative, but I had noticed that on a subsequent trip out there. But we could propose to put in, I mean, the best way to stop it spreading is to put in a root barrier. If you were to allow that, we have to do a narrow excavation down the bank to put in a root barrier. We could do that, and we'd have to cut back, keep the bittersweet and everything else cut back. The knotweed has to be stopped by the roots. We could do that if you want to put that in.
I think that's a good idea. Up to the board.
Thank you. Jen, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add. I like Thomas' idea of the root barrier. So we can condition that.
Okay. And to be clear, I think the quorum is everyone because this has never been open, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for comments then. Betsy?
So, Tom, I don't understand why you wouldn't take this opportunity to get rid of the knotweed. And then, it's going to be a problem. Even if you have a root barrier, it's going to seed and it's going to spread into the rest of that area.
I can certainly discuss that with the Feenans and see. I think they, I could say they might want to do that. I mean, when they, sometimes it's a big undertaking to go through the process of getting someone going through the permitting process and the physical process of doing this work. But I'll talk with them about that, see if they brought that, amend this order or whatever with some plans to do that.
That's the only question I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Courtney?
I will echo Betsy's comments. I think this is the time to get rid of that, because it's just going to be an ongoing issue.
I'd say too, at some point, we'd have to put in a root barrier because you can see from the pictures that this patch of knotweed does go onto the neighbor's property too. So we can you know, if I get them to push it back somewhat, we'd still have to put in a root barrier to stop it from spreading from the neighbor's root system.
So Jen, to be clear, that wouldn't be conditionable, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kevin?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Okay, Mark?
No additional comments here.
Thank you. Maury?
Just mirror what Betsy said.
Peter?
I agree with Betsy.
Russ?
I'm all set.
Steve?
No comments.
All right. So again, just to be clear, it is not in this proposal. Is that fair to say, Jen?
Correct.
That is the knotweed removal. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So they would have to come back for an amendment if they're going to do that, correct?
Correct.
Thank
That
you.
would have to be conditioned, yes.
Okay.
So I'm prepared to make a motion, but I want to make one more suggestion to Tom that,
Oh, I don't want a motion yet.
all
Go
right,
ahead, comment. Go ahead.
I'm going to just suggest to Tom that he talk to his clients and ask if they could talk to their neighbors next door and have a joint, get rid of all the knotweed there.
Okay. Jen, do we have any public?
If I may say, just one more thing, we could talk with the town also, because that last picture I had showed the knotweed along their eroded bank. Of course, part of that is up on the town layout of Lake, I think it's a town layout of Lake Lehman Road. So there's a lot of knotweed, that a lot of owners of the knotweed. But I'll talk with the Feenans about at least talking to the owner, the abutter to the south.
And I'm sure Jen can give you direction as to how to deal with the town to get permission to do it on town property too.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge problem all over town, as
Yeah.
you well know, Tom.
Yep, I do know.
Okay. Jen, do we have any chat comments? Any public comments at all?
No, not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Betsy, you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter.
Second.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. We have no public comments at this time, so I'm going to call for the vote. If there are no further comments. Okay, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Hunt and I.
It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Good night.
Nice, Tom.
All right. Next up is Cameron Kodaka, 13 Fells Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to reconstruct an existing patio, construct elevated access stairs with a platform over the coastal bank, abandon an existing path, and reestablish natural vegetation within the path, manage invasive plants, and install mitigation plantings. Could I have a quorum on this?
It hasn't been open yet, Jamie.
Oh, it hasn't? Okay,
No, Jamie.
that's all of us. All right. Jen, who do we have on this? Mr.
No,
Borselli.
Mr. Chairman, we got a continuance request in today. This was continued from either last week or the week before because this project happens to be in a natural heritage area of concern for a rare plant that can only be surveyed in July through September. Natural heritage will not determine if the project constitutes a take without this survey. So they just allowed, the first continuance was just so they could kind of regroup with this information. So they have asked for a continuance until the end of July. And I was just looking for my book. I believe it is July 29th. They're requesting a continuance for, correct, July 29th.
So
At the
moved.
request of the applicant, we continue this to July 29th.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this until July 29th.
It's for the Salt Pond Pennywort.
We want to make sure we have habitat for the salt pond.
Pennywort.
Okay, does anybody want to comment on this? All right, call for the vote to continue until 7:29. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. That hearing is continued till 7:29. Thank you. Next up are requests to extend the existing order of conditions. First up is James McLaughlin, Town of Falmouth, Bourne's Pond Bridge Replacement, Falmouth, Mass, DEP 254278, requesting a 3-year extension. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the town is requesting a continuance until May 13th. I did let the town engineer know there may be additional questions on this extension. He was unable to make tonight's meeting. I did not realize that. I lost my work cell phone for most of the day, found it buried at the bottom of my bag. He just was unable to make tonight's meeting and asked for to be able to address the board questions, if any, on May 13th. And that's fine. We can extend it. I mean, we can continue it till May 13th.
Okay.
The request of the applicant, we will continue this to May 13th.
Second.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this until May 13th. Call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Is unanimous. This request is continued until 5:13. Next up is Andreas and Joanne Spalaris, 78 Squibnocket Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, DEP 254277. Request a 1-year extension. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, the applicant is requesting a continuance until May 13th. Their attorney, Brian Wall, wants to be able to address the board, and they are currently on your May 13th agenda for an enforcement issue in regards to the order of conditions. And Attorney Wall just asked that he be able to address the board on both issues at the May 13th hearing.
At the
Would we be
request
able to
of the
hold those at the same time?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I would take them one at a time, but I mean, you could open them simultaneously. We can discuss that. Let me talk to Irie
Okay.
about that and see how she thinks we should handle that one.
It just seems to be, it'd be more efficient that
Yeah,
way.
and just to let the board know, I did place it on tonight's agenda. The order does, without this executive order declaring the COVID emergency and allowing all permits to continue, this order would have expired on Sunday. And the request to extend just came in. But we are able to continue it to the May 13th hearing because of the declaration of emergency and the legislation that came out from the COVID pandemic.
May I
Okay.
ask another question? Jamie?
Yep.
Jen, for the first permit, was that extended a couple of times?
Yes. For this one, this has been extended for 4, correct?
All right,
But Brian does want to address the board next week.
yeah, that's fine.
I have a question.
Would save any other comments or questions until next week.
I'll make a motion to continue till next week or
The week
Oh, I'm
after.
sorry, the 13th, my
the
apologies.
13th, to May 13th.
I'll
Carl
second.
Hawk,
I have a question. Question, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Has the work actually started?
I think we should hold
Yes,
discussion.
Courtney.
till it's
That-
continued.
Yes, but we can discuss that next week, okay?
Okay,
Is
so
that
the
a yes
motion,
or no?
Yes, the house is in.
we have a motion and a second to continue until 5:13. I'm gonna call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird,
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The hearing is continued until 5:13. What a request. Next up, vote order conditions. First one is the Christine M. Hand Trust, 335 Shore Street, Falmouth, Mass. Jen? And or Kevin?
1 second, Mr. Chairman, let me pull my notes on that. Okay. This was the raise and rebuild, right on the corner of Surf Drive and Shores, or sort of on the corner of Surf Drive and Shore Street. This was the one where they put the revised plan in to match the architecturals that shows the very reduced enclosure with the breakaway panels, just enclosing that entrance and the storage mudroom area where the staircase is. So that was really great to see. There was some discussion regarding the location of the location of any air conditioner or generator platforms. We were told at the hearing it would be incorporated into the footprint of the design that was before you, and that there would not be any additional platforms built from the structure. We did raise a concern with that, given a similar property a few doors down, and were assured that that was not going to happen. So I do believe the board should make a finding and a special condition that any additional platforms to support an AC or generator unit does need to come back for an amendment, because they did do their mitigation calculations. They weren't required to provide any mitigation, but we don't know how big these platforms are going to be, and that could trip a mitigation requirement. So they would need to come back, I think, as the board discussed, with an amendment for that. Does that make sense?
I agree.
And then I do also think it's important to make a finding that the only enclosure is that small area where the staircase is, mudroom, and that storage area.
Definitely.
I think that was about it. Kevin, do you remember anything else, or anyone?
Nothing else comes to mind besides what you just said. The big thing was the AC units.
And they did say they were going to incorporate them into the existing deck. So, that might be how they're going to do it.
The existing, or the proposed footprint. But we have the architectural, so we know what all the space inside is going to be used for. So that didn't really make much sense, but they will have to come back. And it is a very highly visible corner that many of us travel. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely see it.
Mm-hmm.
Heard here, I'll make a motion to accept the order as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion from the board?
I just want to say that I agree with both of the special conditions that Jen just mentioned.
Okay. All right. I'll ask for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Heard, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The order of conditions is accepted. Next up, Michael and Carla Follick, 12 Uncantina North, West Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was for the proposed house addition. The only comments the staff had made during the hearing was that the mitigation seemed to be running up along the property line, and we had suggested or recommended to the board that it be relocated along the coastal bank. And they had asked to, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, 200 square feet of mitigation, something around there. And they wanted to know if they could do 2 areas of 100 square feet. At the time, the board didn't seem to have an issue with that, but we just did require another property to not break their mitigation plantings up like that. So it's a discussion the board have. We will write the order whichever way you would like it. But like I said, during the hearing, the staff does not recommend having the mitigation plantings as proposed running up along the side. We'd prefer to see it along the bank.
Agreed.
I would have to agree that we just said that we couldn't separate that one over on Great Pond. So I think we should be consistent and keep it all on the top of the coastal bank in one area.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
That's fine with me.
So that area would be in that northeast kind of area where they had the mitigation plantings, except ran up the side. Just to refresh your memories, if you just give me 1 second, I can just share the, kind of like the sharing screen. Do you see his plan?
Yep.
Yeah, so it would be taking this section of mitigation plantings and putting them in this area down here.
All
Correct.
200 square feet.
Is that okay, guys?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I'll make a motion to accept the order as discussed.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the order as discussed. Call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Heard, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carol Hawks, aye. I did ask though, Jen, that he's from now on, make sure that there's land containing shellfish and eelgrass.
right. Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
unanimous, the order of conditions accepted. Next up, Timothy Leadham, trustee, R&G Realty Trust, 1209 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth, Mass. This is Bosun's Marina.
This is Bosun's Marina. Give me 1 second, guys. Highway. Okay, a couple of the big things discussed at the hearing was the importance to incorporate the Division of Marine Fisheries time of year restrictions. Those same time of year restrictions are going to be placed in the Chapter 91 permit. So DEP is going to automatically incorporate them, as is Army Corps. So I really recommend this board not relaxing any of those. They had the opportunity to discuss that issue with DMF, and DMF did not relax those time of year restrictions. I know they have in the past when they're able to, but for some reason, they felt strongly about maintaining that time of year restriction. So I think it is important to incorporate, as we always do, DMF's recommendation. The other thing that the staff had mentioned was LEC's Saltmarsh Protocol. Although LEC will be overseeing the restoration of the salt marsh, that's going to be altered as a result of this project. They specifically wrote in that the salt marsh restoration should be done by a company that has done this before. So I think it's important to incorporate that requirement into the order of conditions, and to have this board or staff approve the contractor chosen by either LEC or the applicant to actually perform the restoration work, as well as monitoring of that salt marsh to make sure that it survives.
Agreed.
Monitoring. I mean, it's going to be a large project. There's going to be a lot of work. There's earthwork involved. There's drainage involved. There's buildings being removed. There's dredging. There's the reconfiguration of the bulkhead. But in the end, it is going to be a really good project for that area. And it'll be a nice marina space. I don't think I had, any other, from the staff point of view, our biggest things after the first hearing was the TOI, meaning the time of year restriction, and salt marsh restoration area.
Yeah, I was concerned with sediment, particularly fine sediment going
Right.
in. And I was glad that Matt had incorporated a second sill curtain, which is in the plan that we're accepting.
All right. I'm only going to call on the quorum. That's on the people that are on this quorum.
Oh, I have
So
that.
it's
Hang
Courtney,
on.
Kevin, Betsy, Amy, Rob. Yep.
Give me 1 second, Mr. Chairman.
I think Jamie has it from last week.
Oh, okay, yeah. Courtney, Kevin, Betsy, Jamie, Russ, and Steve. Sorry, quick enough.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
thank you. It's unanimous. Next up, James J. Mangravetti Jr., 101 Madeline Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just,
The quorum is everyone.
yeah. I think that's like all messed up. What is going on? So this is the one last week where Tom came in after receiving our staff report with the pictures of where we wanted that. And he went through a couple of iterations with the staff that day of the plan. If you just indulge me 1 second, because I love doing this, I'm going to share my screen. Everybody sees the plan. So this was the added area that he proposed in the hearing. Correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So staff was happy to see that, and that added area addressed the staff's concern about not having the, oh, I'm going to point at the plan again, but you can't see it. Having all the mitigation planting smushed up behind the garden and had it more a row along the bank to kind of anchor in that bank, because it's basically lawn right up to the end. So we just felt that that was an appropriate area. They have those boards in to try to stop the ivy and the bank, and I just think shrub material would better anchor that edge of bank. Anything to add, Kevin, on that one? Can't think.
No.
No.
I think Tom agreed with all that, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, they had come back with a plan where they moved the trees closer to the water, and they moved the garden further from the water.
If you're seeing this, they moved and rotated the garden this way. And Betsy, you're saying those trees were moved down here. And then they were removing the circle over here.
Yep, and they're replacing what's it called? It's an invasive honeysuckle.
That's in this area.
And down below, all the way down where it says lawn, those 3 little bushes there.
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
And the single rail fence is in there, correct?
It is. So this was Tom's plan dated
Last week?
It was 4/22, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just have to. Yeah, revised. Okay, revised. 22. Move honeysuckle. Garden. Mitigation along bank. And then they did make a point of saying they're removing some a large amount of pavement in the back, correct? And converting that to lawn?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Works for me. Anything else, guys?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept as discussed.
Second.
Okay, excuse me, we have a motion and a second to discuss, to accept as discussed. Call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Birdy, aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Order is accepted. Next up, Delcor Realty Trust, care of Joanna Delapa, 418 Minot Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Okay, this is the dock at 418 Minot. Just a brief background. Dock in order of conditions sometime in the early 80s. Prior to obtaining Army Corps permit and not obtaining at all a Chapter 91, the applicant applied, not the applicant, but the prior property owner. No, I actually think it was Mr. Delapa applied for a building permit. They were denied the building permit because they didn't have the proper permits. At some point after that, in the mid to late 80s, the building department ordered the dock to be removed because it was built without all of the proper documentation. A couple of years ago, during an ice storm, the dock was uplifted. Staff starting to look into it when we were contacted by a local marine contractor to remove the float. That's when we discovered all of the back history to this. The applicant did apply to this board to repair the dock. That application in its previous form, which had a very large float that didn't conform to your current standards, that application was denied by this board. That decision was upheld in Superior Court, and that decision was upheld at the appeals court. The only issue the appeals court took with our decision or with your decision was that in that we had ordered the dock to be removed. And if you remember the language of the appeal decision, they upheld your decision, but they reserved the right to decide on the legality of the dock on a different day. It brings us to today. They applied for the proposed project before you, trying to conform with all of the performance standards possible. They do trip the shellfish density. So they are above the threshold of shellfish density. So that does not meet your current regulations. And they have asked for a variance from that regulation. All I can say is working with this board for 15 years, you've never given a variance for the shellfish. Those are basically outlining the history and the facts of the project.
We have the quorum.
The quorum is Kevin, Maury, Jamie, Russ, Steve, and Peter. Jen, can you confirm that?
I am. I'm looking right at it.
That's correct, Amy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then just to follow up, I did send a reminder out to the board that was written by just on your variance procedure that was written by Associate Counsel Harris on how the board's supposed to approach a variance provision or request.
Okay. Anybody have anything they want to throw in there?
With that being said, in the history of,
I'm not on the quorum.
Courtney, stop. Maury, what was that?
I just wanted to just remind this board that we have never accepted a variance that has tripped the shellfish. And I'm going to stand my ground and deny this under that regulation of the shellfish.
Okay. Anybody else that's on the quorum first? Okay, Courtney, you want to add something?
The only thing I want to add is I would agree with Maury. We have never granted a variance on shellfish. I don't think we
Okay.
should start now. The other thing is, I think as you consider this variance, look carefully at the memorandum that the Assistant Town Council gave you, because you have to look at each one of those issues and answer it properly and find out whether they meet those criteria. And those are steep conditions to meet.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Yes. The conditions of the town council set out for a variance are very difficult to meet, and it could be construed so that it's almost met to give the permission for our group committee to issue a variance. However, in the conditions of this case, I see no reason to give a variance.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'll accept the motion. One way or the other. Well, Jen, we would have
You
to
always
put a
put a
motion.
positive motion to keep with prior practice, Jamie. You always put a positive motion on the floor.
Okay,
Motion to approve as discussed. Accept as.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve
As presented,
as presented.
correct? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna take the vote. So Matthews, no. Kevin,
No.
your name?
Brian, no, whatever.
Thank you. Maury,
Carlo Hawks, no.
Peter,
Walsh, no.
Russ,
Robbins, yes.
Steve,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Pat?
Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's 4 opposed, 2-4, so it does not pass. Is that correct, Jen?
Correct.
For the record. Okay. Next up, Karen Olcott, trustee, Small Cottage Realty Trust, 141 Fay Road, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass. I believe the quorum is everyone,
Yeah, but can we go back for a minute?
I suppose.
So Jen, don't 2 votes have to be taken? The first vote was whether the variance is accepted, and then the second vote is on the whole project, or can it just be 1 vote?
I think we've just done one vote before that you just don't, the motion doesn't pass to accept the project as discussed. You discuss the variance request. If the board feels more comfortable taking the 2 votes, it wouldn't hurt, so.
Well, I just thought we had done that in the past, and I thought the motion on the table was to accept the variance.
Yeah, and it didn't pass.
Okay, well then, let's move on then.
You want to do a second vote, Jen?
You know what, if the board doesn't mind, just do the second vote, just so we're very clear because of this format.
Okay, so we're going back.
Russell made the motion to accept the project as presented, correct, Russ? Yeah, so then I would just take a second vote on the variance request then, specifically on the variance.
Okay. So we're going back to Delcor Realty Trust, care of Joanna DeLapa, 418 Minot Road, Falmouth, Mass. For clarity, we're going to take a vote on whether to grant the variance or not.
Someone needs to put a motion on the floor to grant the variance.
I make a motion to put to accept the variance.
Second.
Wait, hang on, clarification, I'm confused. Maura, you said to accept the variance?
Yes, because you always put a positive motion on the floor, Russell.
Got it.
Okay, who seconded that?
O'Brien.
Thank you. Okay, so again, this is a positive motion to accept the variance.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm gonna take the vote. Matthews, no. Kevin,
No. O'Brien, no.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks, no.
Peter,
Walsh, no.
Russ,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, it's still 4-2 to deny the variance, that is. So have we dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's on this
I
one?
believe so. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for your patience. Okay. Next up, Karen Olcott, trustee, Small Cottage Realty Trust, 141 Fay Road, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass. Ben?
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was to raise the existing cottage and rebuild. It also required, I believe, moving the septic system, moving the shed, and placing mitigation plantings. Some of the things the staff had noted in the staff report was mitigation plantings were placed in an area that was already vegetated, and we'd prefer to see the mitigation plantings closer to the resource area. I think one or two commissioners pointed out that the bank is a resource area, but again, it is slightly vegetated, and we noted that. Another thing, they are relocating the shed, I believe, putting in a new septic, and you should make a finding and a condition about the driveway where they are proposing those kind of grass pavers, and to keep with your recent practices, put a condition in that paver system does need to function as, as is intended and designed, and that it can't just turn into like an impervious gravel surface. It has to be that pervious area, and we can take the condition and the finding right out of two similar cases, one in Woods Hole and one in North Falmouth, where you made those similar conditions and findings regarding the grass paver system. And I think that's all the staff had. Kevin, anything to add?
I have no additional comments, Mr. Chairman.
I have a comment. So there is some vegetation, like there's some goldenrod, etc. And so I think there should be a condition. I think there should be a finding that there is some vegetation, a scattered vegetation where the mitigation planting is going to be put, but all the native plants that are there should stay. I mean, that would all be a normal understory of that kind of area.
Okay, anything else?
I just had one concern. I mean, we just had one there on Uncantina where we wanted the mitigation planting closer to the resource, Madeline Ave closer to the resource. I just like to be consistent in the coastal, that area of the bank did have vegetation on it. And so usually we don't allow, I mean, you can augment it, but we usually, I mean, we've very consistently asked for the mitigation to be closest to the resource.
Well, I'm going to make the same argument I made when it first came before, that it's very scattered vegetation where they're going to put it. And this is in a velocity zone, and it's a coastal bank. It is a resource, and it'll protect that part of the bank.
the thing is, Betsy, if they would plant down closer to the resource, then it would slow the velocity down before it got to the coastal bank, which is why it's all lawn down below.
The lawn is in the coastal bank, is on the coastal bank.
Jen, is there a standard condition that the project needs to remain staked throughout the project?
The project will have to be restaked before it begins. So, especially the mitigation area, so we know that it's going in the appropriate area. So the project will need to be restaked, and we can make that a condition.
And it would have to be for
To
compliance
be
anyway.
restaked by a surveyor.
Okay.
Jamie, I think we have a difference of opinion, Betsy and I think it would be nice to know before we vote this, if, which way the board wants to go, because I'm not going to deny it if everybody's fine with it on the coastal bank. I'm not going to go against it. I just like the consistency of being closer to the resource.
Well, I agree with that statement, and I had asked about that, but I defer to the experts on. I mean, I thought it should be closer to the A zone, closer to the resource. But as Betsy said, the coastal bank is a resource. So, Jen, what's your opinion?
The staff, just to keep you consistent with your regulations, our recommendation and opinion was in the staff report that it should be closer to the resource area. And that's because that is what the regulations state. We are trying to write these staff reports in strict accordance with your regulations, which is what I'd like Kevin and Alyssa to continue to do.
Agreed.
You guys have to make the hard decision. Can't leave it to me anymore.
I'm going to make one more statement. This is in the A zone. It's not only in the A zone to the coastal beach and to the water. It is a resource area.
I understand, Betsy. But, when I looked at this, I specifically, and in speaking with Miss Alcott, specifically referenced a property off of T-Ticket, which this was a very similar case, except T-Ticket had a marsh, this has a dune, in which the coastal bank in that area was lawn and wanted to put the mitigation plantings up near a little cottage type house. It was a very, very modest house. And this board made the decision to have them relocate the mitigation plantings closer along that marsh.
This was a discussion that could have been had the 2 times we had the meeting.
I know, I'm just saying, I'm being asked questions and I'm answering them.
And then we're going to get ourselves into the position that we're going to make conditions where we didn't have these discussions.
I agree with Betsy.
I don't think we can condition this. I mean, meaning to change it. So we're going to have to vote whether we're going to accept it as it is or not. Correct?
And I can tell you, Jamie, this would not win in court.
That is what your current counsel is recommending, Jamie, yes.
Okay. All right, so is there any more discussion on this? Somebody want to make a motion to accept as presented?
I'll make
The
that.
motion to accept as presented. Hello, Hawks.
I'll second it.
Okay, so again, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as presented. So with no further ado, I'm going to ask for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bird aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
it is unanimous. The order of conditions is accepted. That's it, everyone. I'll remind you, we are not meeting next week.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Carlo,
Second, Patton.
Yeah, that motion, by the way, was based on noticing that the sun is about to set behind Jamie, so we want to adjourn
See that?
before it goes away.
Can you
Just for
see,
the record, that's
Jamie?
rising, but
Jamie, do you have the
Yeah.
green flash there?
the what?
The
Green
green
flash.
green flag.
Do you know what the green flash is?
No.
Well, I'm gonna have to tell you. Maury knows what it is.
Beautiful.
All right, we have a motion.
safe,
to
You'll never
adjourn.
see it.
Those of you who don't know what the green flash is, that's a discussion we'll have to have. All of us should all of you should see a
It's a
green
myth.
flash.
It's a myth.
It's not a myth, I can assure you. And Maury can too.
You were both out the same night?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Betsy, this is the motion to adjourn. Betsy,
Betsy, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Gladfelter, aye.
There you
Courtney?
go.
Bird,
Courtney?
aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Peter, you're on mute.
He said aye.
Still on mute, Peter.
Aye.
There you go.
Robbins, aye.
Steve,
Patton, aye.
unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. IT.